One of the questions we ask in the AI readiness assessment is like, do you think this is going to transform your industry? 98% say yes. Then we'll turn the question around and we'll say, how are you readying your people? 50% have done nothing at all. Hey, salespeople, here's your wake-up call that you have to be the brand experience and use AI to support it, but it can't replace you. Honestly, if you're using free tools, you're always paying. It's only a question of whether you're paying with your data or whether you're paying with money.
What's one super practical AI hack the sales team should start using tomorrow? Whether it's a prompt, whether it's the way they approach for end users that are actually listening to this, for AEs and SDRs. Hey Julie, good to see you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's nice to see you as well, Michael. How are things going?
Things are good, just moved back, tried to furnish this apartment, and it seems like we really underestimated how much time we need to spend to, get this done, but we're getting there. We're getting there, so can't complain.
Yeah, I have a friend that calls that optimistic personality disorder.
That's true. It's been 2 weeks and it's half empty. Look, I'm super happy to have you on the show. Super pumped about this conversation. Before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit, about yourself and your journey and what you're working on these days?
Sure. So I do a lot of different things. I think like I'm a multipreneur. And so I do a lot of different things. From a services perspective, I primarily am a professional speaker. So I travel around the world and I speak on AI and making AI accessible to businesses and organizations. So I speak a lot to associations, to corporations, sales teams, kind of introducing them to AI, getting them to embrace it, get excited about it, to see the potential of it. That's a big part of what I do. And I do a lot of keynotes in that as well. And then I also run a business of my own. So under the Smarter HQ banner, I have a new product coming out called Stage Hopper, which is a SaaS platform, which is a lead finding and lead sharing platform for professional speakers. And before that, I have created multiple other products that have been served up to various communities. One of them was the first Bluetooth microphone that was designed to work with mobile phones to allow people to get great audio on videos, kind of up to 50, 60 feet away. So back before all of the Rodes and the DJIs of the world were creating Bluetooth mics, ours was the first one. And that ended up being used in about 40 or 50 different countries, I think, maybe even up to 60 at our last count.
Wow.
And then all of that has happened in the last kind of 10 or so years. And before that, I spent 20 or 25 years in enterprise technology, working with companies like Oracle and JD Edwards and PeopleSoft, doing everything at some point or another. So consulting, training, partner development, sales. I ended up in product strategy, where I spent the last kind of many years of my career in product strategy and product management and product marketing.
This is amazing. This is so fascinating because it sounds like you're someone who likes to, explore different things. You did so many different things and you did it successfully, and right now you do keynotes. So I'm really curious, like, to get your view on AI, obviously. And most of our audience are senior leaders, senior sales leaders. So you have sales background as well. So it's interesting to hear from your perspective as someone who's a, serial inventor. Do you think AI could ever match human creativity in, coming up with something wonderful?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the answer is it depends on what we consider to be human creativity.
Mm-hmm.
What's fascinating about, innovation, and so innovation is another area that I spend a lot of time and investment, and so innovation and AI are the two topics I speak about. Although honestly, people ask me more for AI now than they do innovation. But what's interesting about innovation is a lot of the great innovations aren't necessarily, big, bold ideas from scratch. What they are is they're twisting an existing idea or applying an existing idea to a different frame. So, for example, the product that I'm building right now, I kind of describe it as a glass door for speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Airbnb was like Uber, but for houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea of taking some kind of a known commodity or known product option and then framing it in a way that applies to a specific niche or problem or opportunity, and kind of jump starting things that way. So in that respect, I think AI is incredible for that kind of thing, right? That kind of creative shifting and creative thinking, because we come into so much with our own bias. and
Mm-hmm.
our own kind of perspectives and our own corrals on our thinking. And AI doesn't have any of that necessarily, right? I mean, yes, it has its own bias from its sources of data, but that's a much bigger pool than what we're working with as individual humans. So I think it's great for that. Do I think AI could come up with something that has never existed? No, because it's not capable of that at the moment, right? It just is
Mm-hmm.
a predictive engine. So in that respect, it's a little bit of both.
I love it. Look, last year, if someone would have asked this question to me, I would say no, because the data is old. Although it can give you some general ideas what to build, but when the search capability came out, it's like, wow, now we are looking at something really, really powerful. Yes, of course, you still need to, bring your experience and have your sharp focus. Otherwise, you can spend, days just doing research and getting, input. So I'm with you. I guess to your point, it's best to look at a problem we're solving for certain, people, certain niches, and then see what's out there, how can we improve what's already been built and make it better. So speaking of that, look, you deal with a lot of senior leaders, you do keynotes, and I'm sure they come to see you not only for education, but they have problems, they want to solve certain problems. Can we focus on sales teams and what problems they're trying to solve based on your experience?
For sure, absolutely.
Tell me what's more common when you talk to them.
Time. Time.
Hmm.
They have so many things to do, and so many of the things that they do are essential, but they
Hmm.
are not sales productive necessarily.
Hmm.
So, I hear just, I've got to get my CRM updated. I've got to come up with new outreach strategies. I've got to research prospects. I've got to, and the list goes on and on. Their to-do list is just one of the longest to-do lists in an organization. And,
Hmm.
none of that can they not do. Like every single bit of that is essential for a company to grow its revenue, but not all of it is essential to be done by a sales professional. But they don't have, like if every salesperson, I always used to joke that what every salesperson needed was an admin person. Because what salespeople tend to be very good at, and it depends on your industry. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But certainly when we think about enterprise software is a great example of this, right? What salespeople tend to be really good at is that kind of strategic thinking, that, complex account structures, that relationship building and development, and all of that kind of the people side of that and the strategy side of that. And almost across the board, I can tell you that every salesperson that ever worked for me or with me was like dragging them or chaining them to a desk to get them to update a CRM system.
I'm absolutely with you. Look, as a former seller who's actually selling, for his own company right now, one of the main reasons why we actually built something to solve that challenge to update CRM automatically was literally just for myself. I was just tired of doing this. It's like I love conversations. I like to get to know people, think strategically, see how we can build that business case, get our hands dirty. But when it comes to putting all these notes and go to the deal, and oh my God, it's like this is something that I don't want to do genuinely. And it's fascinating when you said time. I think we can take this to so many different directions. To your point, CRM updates, doing outreach, coaching, training. So there are so many implications of AI today that could be very practical for sales teams. But I still believe we are in a very early stages of AI adoption for many organizations. Although we have great customers, like they're adopting, they're spending six figures on tools like ours, but I still see skepticism with so many others. So how do you feel how do you see the market adopting to AI these days?
I think that's completely a true statement. I think it's really interesting that we see all these surveys come out, McKinsey and Forrester, and you see these reports come out and they'll be, 75% of organizations are using AI or 98% of organizations are investing in AI. And I'll go do a keynote to a couple thousand people and I'll be like, "Great, who's using AI?" And half of them will raise their hands and I'll be like, "Who's using it well?" Nobody. Like
Hmm.
I'll ask the question, keep your card up if you think, if you think that you have this and you are comfortable and confident that you're using AI well. And if it's 1%, like, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Everybody go talk to that woman in the back. Like, she's the only one out of 1,000 of us, of 1,000 of you that's like nailing it. So, what we're seeing in reality is that, there's this gap that they don't, there's so much hype around it and
Hmm.
so much, it's so much noise. So it's not just hype, it's all the noise, right? Creating
Hmm.
images, creating text, creating videos, creating, workflows. Now we've got agents, now we've got all of this. And I think what's happened is, just as a self-protective mechanism, sales
Hmm.
in particular, who, by the way, have no time to go and investigate AI and go play with AI tools. Like, that's, again, most of them are not out there trying to build systems. That they don't tend to be a systems oriented group
Hmm.
necessarily. So, they basically just kind of put a little wall up and went, like, I'll just wait until something comes along and like slaps me across the face, and then that's what I'll do. Or I'll wait for somebody to serve it to me, but I
Hmm.
won't be figuring it out on my own. So they're really reluctant. What's interesting is that as soon as I talk to them and we start talking about, like, here's 10 ways it could change your business, here's 10 things it could do for you today, they're like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. You mean I can record all of my sales calls and then I can analyze them and see what I actually missed and what I didn't ask them and what I should have asked them, and I can get better at it? Or, I can see whether or not they talked about having a budget or a need or what the approval process was. So they are desperate for what it will deliver, but there's a disconnect between how do they get there and what is possible.
This is really, really fascinating because while you were, sharing this, I could just remember some of these conversations with some of the clients. And your point is really valid. You said, I want to know who's actually leveraging these tools very well. Can we define very well? Like, what is, very well usage of AI for a sales team?
Well, I think first and foremost, it comes to the question of whether or not they've had any training.
Hmm.
And if there's any guidance from the organization about how and which tools to use. And not just that, but around kind of building that kind of champion usage mentality and that
Hmm.
idea of kind of everybody using it together. I've got a great client here in the UK who is a plumbing manufacturer. They are not an industry typically known for kind of being first adopters. They're just,
Hmm.
they're not on that side of the gap. But I'll tell you what, they've brought me back four
Hmm.
times to train everybody in their organization, pretty much because the goal is that they want everybody to be thinking AI first. And so we do have an AI readiness assessment,
Hmm.
and anybody who's interested in taking it can do so on my website. We can talk about that later. But one of the questions we ask in the AI readiness assessment is like, do you think this is going to transform your industry? Do you think AI will transform your industry? 98% say yes. We haven't figured
Hmm.
out who the 2% are. So 98% say yes. And then we'll turn the question around and we'll say, how are you readying your people? Like, how would you rate the readiness that you are providing to your people through training, through coaching, through support, through guidance? Like, how are you doing with that? 50% have done nothing at all.
Hmm.
Nothing. There's no formal mechanism, and they've basically just left their employees to their devices. Interestingly enough, in that same assessment, leaders will tell us that they know or suspect something like, I think we're about at 88% right now, know or suspect that people in their organization are using tools that they know nothing about and have not approved.
Hmm.
So it's basically a Wild West. That's what the data tells us. It's a Wild West, and leaders are looking the other way rather than kind of facing forward and being like, let's take charge of this and actually let's be at the forefront of the game. On the plus side, I'll throw this out there that if an organization wants to be at the forefront, this is their chance, right?
Hmm.
The bar's not that high. It's not as high as people think. So, like, they haven't missed the boat yet if they kind of get on now.
This is really, really interesting. You know why? Because you mentioned plumbing company. I see a lot of more underserved verticals are being more open to AI. And I have no idea why, to be honest. We are not, purposefully targeting, let's say, SaaS or real estate or let's say, I don't know, constructions. And we see a lot of inbound requests are coming, not from SaaS. And I'm really shocked Because what I'm looking at right now, before previously, like when we had Salesforce or when cloud computing, obviously like software, SaaS, technology companies, they're the early adopters. But right now I see like companies in very strange, industries that we didn't even like purposefully targeted. They come and they're more open. And my observation is you find even an individual in that organization who has the buying power that is the visionary who wants to change their organization because their competition is still very traditional oriented, like in terms of like mindset, so they do things the same old way, and they understand that if they actually bring something that can push their organization further faster, they're going to get a big market share. And we've seen that happening actually in very, very strange industries. No software, no SaaS, nothing. So I don't know why. I wanted to hear from your perspective. When you go to keynotes, when you get your audience, I know it's hard to assess that, but you guys run surveys. Can you tell me like which industries are from typically?
It's a little hard to answer that because I speak a lot at associations.
Okay.
And so it'll be all people from the same industry within that, so it'll be all people from HR, it'll be all people from, manufacturing, it'll be all people from trucking. So, there's a lot of that where it's kind of specific. I think what's interesting is that the appetite, I do wonder sometimes, and this is just personal opinion. I've actually
Hmm.
got no data to support this. I wonder if kind of all of our tech businesses feel like, yeah, we're pretty tech savvy. We've already got this all under
You
control.
can figure it out.
And the, kind of those industries that are less tech centric, that aren't a tech infrastructure, are
Hmm.
so overwhelmed by their processes and their SOPs and their procedures and their data that to them, this is a huge life raft, right?
Hmm.
AI is what they never knew they needed, right? So they see it and they go, this is going to solve all of our problems. This is going to help us make devices IoT that aren't IoT right now. This is going to help us, scale without having to, our margins are tight. So we've got to scale without increasing our headcount. Or we have people who are so overwhelmed with tasks and workload, we've got to take some of this off their plate. So I think that those organizations are just so hungry for it, hungry for the
Hmm.
solution that it offers, whereas tech companies maybe aren't so hungry.
You know, I think this will open a lot of doors for people who can educate this underserved, let's say, industries, people who do assessments, people who can help with implementation rather than saying, hey, this is a one size fits all SaaS solution, go get your license, start using it. Maybe they need a little bit more hand holding, but at the same time, maybe they adopt better because to your point, they're hungry for something, new to solve an old problem. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails? These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. So, Julie, let me ask you something. You mentioned about companies noticing that their employees or end users are using different AI tools without them actually knowing, but they know they're leveraging tools without actually giving any heads up. You warn about ethical dangers of deploying AI without a clear game plan. I think it was one of your posts I read on LinkedIn. What's the scariest, let's say, misuse of AI in sales or hiring that you've actually seen or imagined?
I can imagine a lot. Okay, so I think it's good to know, particularly like, we're seeing a lot of legislation coming out right now, and it's a good reminder. So if we think about it from a sales perspective and just sales itself, there's always a risk of sharing confidential information. So if people are using tools but they don't know how to protect the data, or if they're using, what's worse is they're using, tools that are not kind of premier tools, right? So,
Hmm.
they're using some open sourced, maybe it's a DeepSeek model or something like that.
Yeah.
They're using something. They don't really know what's happening with their data. They're clicking agree to terms and policies and privacy. They have no idea what terms they're agreeing to. They just check the box because we all do that, even though they can be running it through a chat GPT or a Gemini to analyze it now. So, that's one of the biggest risks is putting in confidential information.
Hmm.
If you take that to the other side from a sales leadership perspective, there's a big risk when it comes to hiring, interviewing, management of employees, of using AI or using AI as a crutch and leaning on it to make what is classed as kind of critical decisions or high impact decisions, hiring, firing, promotions, salary changes, using that information to do so, and then ultimately finding out that the AI was working with biased data, or the process wasn't clear, or it didn't function correctly, whatever it is, and somebody loses their job or somebody gets passed over for promotion.
Yeah.
That's lawsuit grounds. And we're seeing that, like Colorado has AI legislation now, for example, that you have to be able to explain the role of any AI in any type of critical decision making around
Hmm.
hiring and employee management. And if you think about, like, there's a great story of an organization that early in the AI days wanted to use AI to analyze all of its staff, and so that they could hire more people like it. Seemed totally reasonable, right? We've got great employees today. Look at all of our employees, evaluate all of our employees, who they are, where they come from, what they're like, so that we can go get more employees just like them. And it
Hmm.
came back and said, right, you probably just need to hire more people named Jared that played lacrosse, because that's what the data said. So they had a finite, very closed data set. It made assumptions based on all the attributes rather than on the ones that would really be indicative of performance. And while that one was a super clear kind of bias issue, it's really easy to look at that and go, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that shouldn't be our hiring strategy. I don't think we can put that on our LinkedIn job post. So that one was pretty clear, but there's a lot more subtle indicators,
Hmm.
right? And we have to remember that AI is fundamentally biased, right? It's
Yeah.
limited in its data source. It's, the data that is used for all of these large language models is typically very Western. It's very English. It's very, tends to be very, heterogeneous, like it's very homogenized data, focused on the people who have written the story, which
Hmm.
we know is fairly biased.
You know what it reminds me of? I don't know if you tried this. I'm sure you did. When you get an answer from AI, whichever model you're using, and it said, "I think you're wrong." Like, are you sure? It's like, "Oh, you're right. I'm wrong. Let me adjust it for you." God damn it! Like,
Yeah,
I
it'll
cannot
give you
trust you.
another wrong answer, right? Give it a chance, and
Exactly.
it'll be like, here's another wrong answer.
You made a mistake again. Yes, I did. Sorry about that. Let me fix it for you. So, how should companies don't miss the train? Because, as you said, they don't have time. They have needs. They need to go for implementation.
Absolutely. And it's an incredible tool. It's an incredible resource.
So how do they not gatekeep usage or experimentation while making sure that they are safe enough so they don't get into lawsuits or something really horrible?
Well, first and foremost is they need to have a plan, right? What is their AI policy? What tools do they encourage people to use? What tools do they allow them to use? They need to make sure that their people understand what they can and should not put into those tools to get data back. Like, we talk about masking information, instead of saying, Oracle, da 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 da, we might say, a large software company.
Hmm.
So how do we kind of protect that data? That's just, if we're using publicly accessible tools, we make sure that we're paying for technology,
Yeah.
because honestly, if you're using free tools, you're always paying. It's only a question of whether you're paying with your data or whether you're
Yep.
paying with money.
Hmm.
And then the next level up from that is that you use siloed tools. So
Hmm.
you use a Microsoft Copilot, or you use a Teams version of ChatGPT, or fill in the blank, but you use an enterprise level solution. And there's lots of them out there now that actually silo your data and protect it so that you can have, and everybody in your organization can have as many conversations as they want to. And all of that context, all of those questions, all of that data all stays within their ecosystem in a protected environment.
That makes a lot of sense. And the best companies we work with right now, the enterprise level companies, are the ones that treat AI like any other tool they're buying. So You buy anything, your CRM system, your outreach tool, or anything as such. You walk them through your security assessment. You have a questionnaire at least just to see the guidelines, to see if this company is really enterprise grade. They already figured out how to protect data or not. So I think the answer is just treat it as another tool. So yes, it's fantastic, it's phenomenal, it's powerful, but walk any vendor through the same process of assessment and security. Would that be fair?
I think that is fair. I think it's also optimistic. And the reason for that is that, as soon as you say to a company, do it like you've always done it, you've now
Mm-hmm.
got a 6-month review process on your hands that involves 18 people and, 5 lawyers, and the list goes on. Your people won't wait, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not waiting. They're going to go off and use tools. So, you have to be, as an organization, prepared to move quickly,
Mm-hmm.
or you're opening yourself up to risk. And I think the other piece of that is, simultaneously, you have to accept the fact that you're probably not going to be able to control every tool that people use. I mean, I've seen it where somebody has 2 laptops on their desk. One is their corporate laptop that's fully locked down. The other is a private laptop. And they're putting corporate information into their private laptop, into Chat GPT, and then taking the information they get from that and putting it back in, into their company database. I've seen it happen. It's so common. And so I think, the other piece of this is really about making sure that everybody in the organization understands AI and understands what it does well, what it does and what it doesn't do, and how to partner with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially if people become over reliant on it, or they don't recognize that it can come back with false positives, or that it can come back with hallucinations, or that it can be too agreeable, or that it could ruin your brand's trust,
Mm-hmm.
by posting crap, like using it to generate really awful LinkedIn posts, or really awful outbound emails, or really awful, contracts. Like, it can do real damage to a company. How many
Mm-hmm.
customers are you prepared to lose over it? Because you haven't ensured that your people understand how to partner with this technology instead of using it like every other platform. Because this isn't the same kind of technology. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't a company-wide CRM system. Like, yes, it should be validated. Yes, it should be vetted. But we also have to have a different perspective on it, because it's very much a, bring your own platform.
This is really actually interesting, and I appreciate you challenging my idea because it tells me we need to go back to education. Because can we control the end user? We can't. But why don't we have classes, literally, or training on AI? People are using it anyway. This is a great point. Like we have sales training, we have content from enablement. Maybe AI should be one of the main focus right now for enablement team to basically roll out to their team so they know what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, in fact, I would go so far as to say, yes, there's AI training, which is almost like a technology kind of training, but there's
Hmm.
actually a whole set of skills that, one of the things that we talk about in what organizations who are effectively empowering their people with AI, one of the things that they do is they develop AI related skills. So, the skills that people need to effectively use AI are not technical skills. You know
Hmm.
that, I know that. Most people who have played with ChatGPT know that. You can get it to do a lot by just describing something. So the
Hmm.
skills they need are critical thinking. How do you evaluate what it brings back? How do I know if this is right or wrong? How do I double check the information? How do I, ensure that the thinking of this is the same thinking that we would want to apply? How do I evaluate it against our brand values and against our approach and our tone of voice? Like, how do I do that? Critical thinking skills, problem solving skills. Didn't give me what I wanted the first time. Well, I need to try a
Hmm.
different angle for this. How do I do that? I need to think around this problem a different way. It could be communication skills, right? The way that you phrase a prompt into any one of these tools can get you a vastly different response.
Hmm.
And people right now, you've got salespeople who are putting in there, write an email to this cold prospect asking them to buy. And that's what they're writing. And of course, they're getting terrible output from that. And then, of course, it's grit and determination. Because,
Hmm.
I've probably had at least 20 salespeople come up to me after a presentation and say, probably more than that, honestly, if I think about it, come up to me after a presentation and say, you know what, I tried it and I thought it was terrible and I just stopped using it.
Hmm.
And then
What
you
was
think,
the
oh,
input?
that is the saddest thing ever.
What was the input you actually put into, let's say, ChatGPT? Maybe the question is, maybe you needed a different prompt. So speaking of the prompt, I think your book 101 plus AI tools, tips, tools, and prompts. I'm curious, what's one super practical AI hack the sales team should start using tomorrow? Whether it's a prompt, whether it's the way they approach for end users that are actually listening to us, for AEs and SDRs. I know it could go in so many different directions, but what's one thing that you find really powerful in your book that they can actually take away from this conversation?
20-60-20.
Okay, let's talk about it.
20-60-20 is a framework or a model that you can use to think about how to partner with AI. So the first 20% of your interaction with AI is on you. We also call this you do you. You have to start with, am I using the right tool? Have I written the right prompt? Have I written the prompt in the best way possible? Have I clearly given it context? Have I clearly described what perspective I want it to take? Have I given it examples? All of that. All of that is on you at the beginning. If you don't guide it correctly, just like, we talk about it as an intern. If you don't guide your intern correctly, you're going to get terrible output. 60% we let AI do the work. That's amazing. Great. It's so good at crunching numbers, doing all of that. The last 20 comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, we often joke like almost everybody now will have seen a post on LinkedIn that you look at and go, written by AI. That crap did not come from a real person. You can't necessarily say why,
Mm-hmm.
but you just know it wasn't written by a
It
person.
feels
And then
weird.
that is a prime example of people who are not doing the last 20. They
Mm-hmm.
probably also didn't do the full 20 at the beginning, but let's just be honest, they didn't do the last 20 for sure, which is that last 20 is reviewing it, verifying it, validating it, tailoring it to be your brand voice, making it sound like you. But you are the bookends of AI. And
Mm-hmm.
that is never more true than it is for sales professionals, because sales professionals, these are the people, SDRs and the sales executives and account managers and all of those people, they are the face of that brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they are not bookending this and wrapping AI, then your clients are having an AI experience. They're not
Mm-hmm.
having a brand experience. They're having an AI experience. And they can get that anywhere. They're going to go and get that from a competitor. They don't need
Mm-hmm.
you for that. So, hey, salespeople, here's your wake up call that you have to be the brand experience and use AI to support it, but it can't replace you.
I love it. So, do you have this guidance and all the steps in your book?
I do. It is in there.
Guys, go get it. Because that's what you need. This is amazing. Look, we are almost about time. I want to ask my last question. You mentioned AI is like an intern now.
Yes.
So, let's fast forward, let's say 5 years. What do you think happens to the sales pros who refuses to adopt? Are they toast, or will human charm always, win the deal? So,
Sure. But I think it will depend on the industry. Some industries, in the same way that some products can continue to be handcrafted and there's value in that handcraft and people will pay a premium for handcrafting, there will still be that handcrafted experience as humans, which is all well and good, but there just won't be very many of them. And you'll have to be exceptional. Um,
mhm,
I think that what we'll see in the future is we will see where AI becomes a partner, almost an extension of people. You'll have like a little army next to you who will, go and research a prospect for you, who will draft emails for you, who will, fill in the blank of all the things it will do for you. It'll update your CRM for you. It'll provide a platform for you to be coached on so that you can practice the conversational skills. Because that's a whole other thing too, right? Is this idea that in the future, we have to rethink how we ready people for these roles. A
mhm,
lot of sales professionals started as SDRs.
mhm,
They started doing cold calling. If AI does cold calling, how do we cut our teeth and become better salespeople? How do we build our conversational skills if we're not building them in low risk environments?
mhm,
So, it's going to require a big rethink in terms of strategy and in terms of how we work with this technology and how we use it. But definitely in the future, the salespeople who aren't using it are still going to be so busy doing manual updates to their CRM. And frankly, those clients are going to go someplace else because a big part of sales isn't just the relationship, it's the service you provide in that relationship.
mhm.
You can be the nicest person in the world, but if the service that you deliver as an organization and the experience they have of buying your product and understanding what it offers and seeing that product match to a customer's needs and connecting all those dots, if you don't do that well, it doesn't matter how nice of a person you are. So,
Hmm.
we kid ourselves if we say this is just a relationship business. It's not.
Hmm.
It's a communication business. And in communication business for sales, it's a combination of, yes, I have to articulate the message, but I have to have the right message to articulate.
I love it. So we finish on a high note, and I really do appreciate you taking the time today. I enjoyed this conversation, Julie. If someone wants to reach out, can they and how?
Sure, of course, you can find me on my website, julieholmes.com. You can find my book on Amazon. So, there's lots of ways to connect with me. If you are on LinkedIn, I do a weekly LinkedIn newsletter. We have an email newsletter as well. But if you want to, step into the AI world a little bit, then the weekly newsletter on LinkedIn is great because we do a prompt every week.
That's amazing. All right, thank you very much. And again, until next time, bye for now.